The massive hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with excitement. Representatives from over 300 spacefaring races had gathered for a historic moment. The arrival of the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel. Massive screens displayed the approaching human ships against the backdrop of stars. "That can't be right," muttered one of the Council's military advisors, adjusting his display settings. "These readings must be wrong." The Council speaker, Marcus, leaned forward in his ornate chair. Like everyone else in the room, he was staring at the tiny fleet of human vessels approaching the station. Most civilizations arrived at the Council in massive ships, some nearly the size of small moons. But these human ships looked like toys in comparison. "Are they sending transport shuttles ahead of their main fleet?" asked another Council member, genuine confusion in his voice. "No," replied the station's tracking officer. "According to their communication, these are their primary vessels. The largest one measures only 300 meters in length." A wave of laughter rippled through the chamber. Some Council members didn't even try to hide their amusement, while others attempted to maintain their diplomatic composure. The human small ships seemed almost comical next to the massive vessels typically seen in Council space. The main doors to the Council chamber opened, and Ambassador James Wright walked in. He was a tall man with gray hair and walked with confidence despite being the only human in a room full of aliens. His simple blue uniform stood in stark contrast to the elaborate robes worn by most Council members. "Welcome, Ambassador Wright," Marcus said, managing to keep most of the amusement out of his voice. "We noticed your arrival." Wright bowed respectfully. "Thank you for having me. Earth is honored to join the galactic community." A Council member from the warrior race known as the Dominators couldn't contain himself any longer. "Do your people live in those tiny ships, or are they just very far away?" His booming laugh echoed through the chamber. Instead of showing anger, Wright smiled. "Size isn't everything, honored Council member. Our ships are exactly as large as they need to be." "But how do you defend yourselves?" another member asked. "Even our civilian transport ships are larger than your military vessels." "We manage," Wright replied simply, his calm demeanor unchanged. The Council speaker raised his hand for silence. "Ambassador Wright, while we welcome Earth to the galactic community, we have concerns. Most civilizations at your stage of development have much more impressive fleets. Are your people perhaps struggling with resources?" Wright walked to the center of the chamber, looking at the massive screens showing his ships. "Not at all. We've found that bigger isn't always better. Our ships are small by choice, not necessity." This statement brought another round of barely contained laughter from the Council members. Even the speaker had trouble maintaining his serious expression. "Very well," Marcus said. "We will proceed with the formal welcome ceremony. However, I feel obligated to warn you. Space can be dangerous. There are pirates, raiders, and hostile forces that prey on vulnerable ships. Perhaps we could arrange for some protection." "That won't be necessary," Wright interrupted politely. "Our ships are quite capable of defending themselves." As if to demonstrate his point, one of the human vessels performed a series of quick maneuvers while docking. Movements that should have been impossible for any ship, regardless of size. A few Council members stopped laughing, their expressions turning thoughtful. But most continued to dismiss the humans as an oddity, a primitive species that didn't know any better. They couldn't understand why anyone would build such small ships when they could construct massive, impressive vessels that showed their power and status. As Wright took his assigned seat, he caught the eye of his ship's captain on one of the screens. They shared a knowing look. They'd expected this reaction. After all, humanity had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving, and true strength didn't always come in large packages. Little did the Council know, they would soon learn this lesson too, and in a way none of them could have expected. The following week brought more surprises for the Galactic Council. During a routine patrol near the station, a drunk cargo pilot crashed his ship into one of the small human vessels. Everyone expected to see the human ship destroyed. Instead, something remarkable happened. A shimmering blue field appeared around the human vessel just before impact. The massive cargo ship, nearly 5 times larger than the human craft, bounced off harmlessly. The human ship didn't even move from its position. "Impossible," shouted head engineer Rogers of the Council's technical division. He rushed to check his readings again. Those energy levels, they shouldn't be possible from a ship that size. Word of the incident spread quickly through the station. Council engineers swarmed around the human ships, scanning them with every device they had. Ambassador Wright allowed the examination but denied all requests to inspect the ship's interiors, citing security protocols. "Look at these power readings," one engineer whispered to another. "Their reactor should be bigger than the whole ship to produce this much energy. It doesn't make sense." In the Council's main observation room, military advisors watched recordings of the human ship's movements. The vessels performed maneuvers that broke several laws of physics, at least according to traditional Council understanding. "Their ships turn without thrust delays," noted one advisor. "They stop and start like they're ignoring inertia completely." Another officer pointed at the screen. "And watch their formation flying. Perfect synchronization. Not even our best pilots can match that precision." Meanwhile, Ambassador Wright attended his first official council meeting. The other representatives still treated human achievements with skepticism, but their mockery had a nervous edge now. "Tell us, Ambassador," asked a council member, trying to sound casual, "how did your species develop such unusual ship designs?" Wright smiled his usual calm smile. "Necessity is the mother of invention. Earth's early space program had strict size and weight limitations. We learned to think small but efficient. But surely now that you have better technology, you'll start building proper-sized ships," another member suggested. "Why would we?" Wright replied. "Our ships serve their purpose perfectly." Just then, alarms blared through the station. A group of raiders had been spotted approaching a nearby trade route. The Council's defensive fleet would take at least 20 minutes to respond. "Permission to assist?" Wright asked politely. The Council speaker hesitated, then nodded. Everyone watched as 3 small human ships broke formation and headed toward the raiders. The entire Council chamber fell silent, all eyes fixed on the massive display screens. The human ships moved like nothing they'd ever seen before. They weaved through space with impossible grace, making the raiders' shots miss completely. Then they demonstrated something even more impressive. "Their weapons," gasped a military advisor. "They're not using standard energy beams or projectiles. Indeed, the human ships fired what looked like tiny stars. Each blast was small but devastatingly precise, disabling the raiders' engines without destroying their ships. Within 5 minutes, the threat was neutralized. The human vessels had captured the raiders without a single casualty on either side. When the Council's defensive fleet finally arrived, they found the raiders' ships neatly packaged, their weapons disabled, and crews contained. Back in the Council chamber, Wright acted as if nothing unusual had happened. But now the other representatives looked at him differently. The laughter was gone, replaced by thoughtful silence and worried whispers. "Those were just patrol ships," Wright mentioned casually. "Not even our combat vessels." The Council speaker cleared his throat. "Yes, well, thank you for your assistance, Ambassador. Perhaps we should discuss updating our defense agreements." As the meeting continued, news of the human ship's performance spread throughout Council space. The story grew with each telling. How the tiny human vessels had danced through space, how they'd wielded power that seemed to defy physics itself. But this was just the beginning. Soon, the galaxy would learn exactly why humans built their ships the way they did, and why size truly didn't matter when it came to human ingenuity. The Galactic Council's emergency meeting chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from dozens of worlds demanded answers about the latest Dominator attacks. The massive screens showed burning colonies and destroyed ships, all victims of the recent raids. 3 more trading posts destroyed, shouted one council member, slamming his fist on the table. Where are our defense fleets? The military commander looked uncomfortable. Our ships are too slow. By the time we arrive, the Dominators are gone. Their new raiders are faster than anything we've seen before. Ambassador Wright sat quietly in his corner, watching the chaos unfold. The Dominators, once just an annoying member of the Council, had turned into a serious threat. Their ships now attacked without warning, destroying everything in their path. Maybe, Wright suggested carefully, we could help. The Council chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in dismissive responses. Your tiny ships, scoffed the military commander. The Dominators are using warships 5 times the size of our largest vessels. Your little fleet would be crushed. Wright remained calm. Size isn't everything, as we've demonstrated before. This isn't about stopping a few drunk raiders, another council member argued. The Dominators are warriors. They've destroyed every ship that's faced them. Just then, another emergency signal flashed on the screens. A major trading hub was under attack. The Council watched helplessly as massive Dominator ships descended on the defenseless station. Our nearest fleet is 3 hours away, reported a tactical officer. The human ships could reach there in 20 minutes, Wright pointed out. The Council speaker shook his head. We appreciate your offer, Ambassador, but we cannot risk. A new voice interrupted him. Actually, we have a human ship in range right now. All eyes turned to one of the smaller screens. A human patrol vessel, barely visible against the stars, was approaching the trading hub. The council chamber grew tense as everyone watched. They're going to get themselves killed, muttered someone. The Dominator ship spotted the human vessel. Their commander's laughter boomed through the open communications channel. Look, brothers, one of the humans' toy ships wants to play. What happened next left the council in stunned silence. The human ship moved like lightning, weaving between the massive Dominator vessels. Its small size, combined with incredible speed, made it almost impossible to hit. The Dominator's powerful weapons kept missing their target. Stop dancing and fight, roared the Dominator commander. If you insist, came the calm reply from the human captain. A series of small, bright flashes erupted from the human ship. Each blast hit with surgical precision, disabling weapon systems and engines. Within minutes, 3 Dominator ships hung powerless in space, their crews trapped inside. This is impossible. The Dominator commander's voice shook with rage. We will not be humiliated by. His transmission cut off as his ship's power systems failed. The council chamber remained silent for several long moments. On the screens, the tiny human vessel began helping evacuate the damaged trading hub, as if it hadn't just accomplished something unprecedented. Well, said Wright, standing up, if you'll excuse me, I need to file my report about this incident. Wait, the council speaker's voice stopped him. Perhaps we should discuss your offer of assistance. But before Wright could respond, more emergency signals lit up the chamber. Dozens of Dominator ships had appeared on the border of Council space. This wasn't just a raid, it was an invasion fleet. They're attacking everything in their path, reported a tactical officer. Our outer colonies are completely defenseless. Wright looked at the tactical display, his expression grave. I'll contact Earth immediately. But remember, you dismissed our help before. Are you sure you want it now? The council members looked at each other nervously. They had mocked the human ships, dismissed their capabilities, and now they might be the only hope for survival. The invasion had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn why you should never judge human ingenuity by the size of their ships. The distress signal echoed through council space. A civilian transport carrying refugees from the outer colonies had been cornered by Dominator raiders. The Council's defense fleet was still hours away, too far to help. Captain Tom Reed of the human vessel Swift watched his tactical display. His ship was the only one close enough to respond. Command, requesting permission to engage. Permission granted, came the quick reply from Ambassador Wright. Show them what one ship can do. The council observation room was packed as everyone watched the scene unfold. 3 massive Dominator ships surrounded the civilian transport, their weapons charged. "The human ship is doomed," muttered a council military advisor. "1 small vessel against 3 raiders? Impossible odds." The Dominator commander's voice boomed over the open channel. "Surrender your cargo and passengers, and we might let you live." A new voice cut through the channel, calm, almost cheerful. "This is Captain Reed of the Earth vessel Swift. I suggest you power down your weapons and leave." Laughter erupted from the Dominator ships. "One tiny human ship dares to challenge us. Perhaps we'll keep your wreckage as a souvenir." "Last warning," Reed replied simply. Then he showed them why humans believed in quality over quantity. The Swift moved like water, flowing between laser blasts and plasma torpedoes. Not a single shot from the massive raiders could touch the human ship. The council members watched in amazement as Reed demonstrated maneuvers they'd thought impossible. "How is it moving like that?" one engineer demanded. "Nothing can change direction that fast." Then the Swift counterattacked. Small points of brilliant light shot from its weapons ports. Each blast was tiny compared to the Dominator's massive weapons, but they struck with incredible precision. The first raider's weapons went dark. The second lost engine power. The third tried to flee but found itself trapped by what looked like a web of energy, deployed from the Swift's rear section. "What kind of technology is this?" whispered a council scientist, frantically taking notes. In less than 5 minutes, all 3 Dominator ships had been disabled. The civilian transport was safe, and Captain Reed hadn't even destroyed any of the raiders, just neutralized them completely. "This is impossible," the Dominator commander raged. "Our ships are superior in every way." "Size isn't everything," Reed replied, echoing Ambassador Wright's favorite phrase. "Now sit quietly while the council sends ships to arrest you." Back in the council chamber, the mood had shifted dramatically. Representatives who had once laughed at human ships now whispered nervously among themselves. They'd just watched one tiny vessel defeat 3 ships that would have troubled even their largest battlecruisers. Ambassador Wright stood before the council, his expression serious. "What you've just witnessed was a standard patrol ship using basic defensive protocols. Would you like to know what our actual combat vessels can do?" The council speaker leaned forward. "You mean that wasn't one of your warships?" "No," Wright smiled slightly. "That was just a patrol boat, the equivalent of what you might use to monitor asteroid fields." Silence fell over the chamber as this information sank in. If a human patrol ship could do this, what were their real warships capable of? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Emergency alerts flashed across the screens. The Dominator invasion fleet had grown. Hundreds of ships now approached Council space, led by their most powerful vessels. "We need your help," the Council speaker admitted, his voice heavy. "Not just one ship this time. We need everything you can send." Wright nodded gravely. "I'll contact Earth immediately. But remember, what you saw today was just a test run. Our combat fleet is somewhat different." As the ambassador left to make his call, the council members looked at each other nervously. They'd mocked the human ships for being small, but now they realized size truly didn't matter. Something much more impressive was coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council's main chamber had transformed into a war room. Tactical displays showed thousands of red dots representing the Dominator invasion fleet. They moved steadily through space, crushing everything in their path. 6 colonies lost, reported the tactical officer, his voice shaking. 4 major trading posts destroyed. They're not even taking prisoners anymore. The council speaker turned to Ambassador Wright. "Where is your fleet? We need them now." "They're coming," Wright replied calmly, studying the tactical displays. "But I need you to understand something first. What you're about to see might surprise you." Another emergency signal flashed. The Dominator's Supreme Commander, Warlord Gruck, appeared on the main screen. His massive form filled the display, battle armor gleaming. "Surrender now," Grok demanded. "And we might let some of you live as slaves. Resist, and we will destroy everything." The council chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Their mighty defense fleets had already failed to stop the invasion. The Dominators' new weapons tore through traditional shields like paper, and their ships were faster than anything in council space. 2 hours until they reached the core worlds, announced the tactical officer. Ambassador Wright stepped forward. "Patch me through to the Dominator Command." The council members watched in surprise as Wright faced the massive alien warlord. The size difference between them seemed to mirror their fleets, the humans looking tiny compared to their opponents. "Ah, the human," Grok laughed. "Have you come to offer your surrender personally?" "Actually," Wright smiled, "I wanted you to see something. Look at your long-range sensors." Confusion crossed Grok's face as he checked his readings. Then his eyes widened. "That's impossible." The council members rushed to their own displays. At first, they saw nothing unusual. Then they noticed small changes in the star patterns. Tiny distortions in space. Points of light that shouldn't be there. "Active stealth systems," Wright explained. "We've been watching for weeks, analyzing your tactics, studying your weapons. One by one, human ships appeared on the sensors. Not the patrol ships everyone had seen before, but something new. They were still small compared to the Dominator vessels, but they moved with deadly purpose. 50 ships. Grok roared with laughter. "You think 50 tiny ships can stop my invasion fleet?" "Size isn't everything," Wright replied. "Perhaps you should count again." More ships appeared, hundreds of them, emerging from perfectly hidden positions throughout the sector. They had surrounded the entire Dominator fleet without anyone noticing. "Admiral Stone," Wright spoke into his communicator. "You may proceed." The human ships moved with incredible coordination. They flowed through space like a single organism, taking positions that seemed random at first, but followed a pattern no one in the council had ever seen. "What are they doing?" asked the council speaker. "Swarm tactics," Wright explained. "Something we learned from Earth's insects. Each ship is part of a larger whole." Grok's confidence began to fade as he watched the human fleet's movements. "Fire," he commanded. "Destroy them all." But the human ships were already moving. They flowed around the massive Dominator vessels like water around rocks. The invasion fleet's mighty weapons found no targets, while the humans' precise strikes began to tear apart their formation. "Council members," Wright announced formally, "Earth officially requests permission to handle this threat. Do we have your approval?" The council speaker looked at the tactical displays, watched the perfect dance of the human ships, and nodded. "Permission granted, Ambassador. Show us what your fleet can really do." As the battle began in earnest, the council members finally understood. The humans hadn't built small ships because they had to. They'd built them because it was the smartest way to fight. The galaxy was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humanity. And Ambassador Wright smiled, knowing that after today, no one would ever mock the size of human ships again. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. The council observation room was silent as everyone watched the impossible unfold before their eyes. Admiral Stone's voice came clear through the command channel. "All ships, execute Formation Delta. Target their command and control systems first." The human fleet moved like a school of fish, breaking into smaller groups that flowed between the massive Dominator ships. Their formation looked chaotic at first, but every movement was precisely calculated. "Impossible," Warlord Grok roared. "No fleet can move with such coordination." But the humans proved him wrong. Their ships communicated faster than thought, sharing data and adjusting tactics in microseconds. When the Dominators fired their massive weapons, they found only empty space. "Look at their energy readings," a council engineer gasped. "Those human ships, they're sharing power somehow." Indeed, the small human vessels had formed energy networks, linking their systems together. When one ship needed more shield power, others provided it instantly. When one launched an attack, Others covered its vulnerable points. "You fight like cowards," Grok raged. "Face us in proper combat." Admiral Stone's reply was calm. "We fight to win, Warlord. Nothing more, nothing less." The human ships began their real attack. They didn't target the Dominator's weapons or engines. Instead, they struck precise points that seemed random at first. Small, powerful beams sliced through specific sections of the massive ships. "What are they doing?" a council member asked. Ambassador Wright explained. "Nerve strikes, you might say. Every ship has critical junction points. Hit them right." And the effect became clear as Dominator ships began shutting down. Their mighty weapons fell silent, their engines died, and their shields collapsed. The human strikes had bypassed their main defenses to hit vulnerable control systems. "This is why we build small," Wright continued. "Precision over power, skill over size." Grok's flagship turned to flee, but found itself surrounded by a dozen human vessels. They moved in perfect sync, herding the massive ship like sheepdogs controlling a much larger animal. "Your fleet is finished," Admiral Stone announced. "Surrender now." "Never." Grok fired everything his ship had left. The space around his vessel lit up with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But when the energy storm cleared, the human ships remained untouched. They had moved in patterns that left every shot hitting empty space, predicting the Dominator attacks before they even fired. "Final warning," Stone said. "Your choice." In response, Grok ordered his remaining ships to make a suicide run at the Council station. He didn't expect what happened next. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The first intercepted the attacking ships. The second created an energy web that trapped the would-be kamikazes. The third launched what looked like tiny stars at specific points on each vessel. Within seconds, every Dominator ship hung powerless in space. No explosions, no destruction. Just complete shutdown. "Control systems neutralized," reported Stone. "All enemy ships contained. No casualties on either side." The council chamber erupted in cheers. They had just witnessed the impossible. A small fleet defeating an invasion force many times its size, without a single death. "How?" the council speaker asked Wright. "How did you do this?" Wright smiled. "On Earth, we have a saying. Work smarter, not harder. We learned long ago that bigger isn't always better. A knife can be more effective than a sword if you know where to strike." As council ships arrived to take the Dominators into custody, the human fleet reformed into a single formation. Their small size now seemed fitting rather than amusing. They were precision instruments, not crude weapons of war. The galaxy had witnessed a revolution in warfare. The age of massive battleships was over. The future belonged to those who understood that true power came from how you used your strength, not how much you had. And no one would ever laugh at the size of human ships again. 1 month after the Great Battle, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. Where once human ships had been mocked, now detailed holograms of Earth vessels floated above the central display, studied with respect and admiration. "The emergency session will now begin," announced the council speaker, looking at the assembled representatives. "Today's topic, the integration of human naval technology with Council Defense Forces." Ambassador Wright sat in a new seat, one much closer to the Council's inner circle. Next to him, Admiral Stone prepared to present their defense proposals. "Before we begin," the Council speaker addressed the chamber, "I believe we owe our human friends an apology. We judged them wrongly, and the galaxy nearly paid the price for our arrogance." The chamber, once filled with laughter at human ships, now nodded in agreement. The Dominator invasion fleet's defeat had changed everything. Reports from across Council space told the same story. The human vessels had revolutionized space combat. "Tell us," asked one of the military advisors, "why did Earth choose this path? Why small ships when everyone else built bigger?" Admiral Stone stood up. "Simple necessity at first. Earth's early space program had strict limitations. We couldn't build massive ships, so we had to be creative. He gestured to the holograms. But then we realized something. Bigger ships meant bigger targets, more resources wasted, more lives at risk. So we went the opposite way. The technical displays showed the inner workings of human vessels, their revolutionary microfusion reactors, advanced neural networks, and swarm combat systems had rewritten the rules of space warfare. Each human ship, Stone explained, carries the firepower of a traditional battlecruiser, but packed into a smaller, faster package. More importantly, they work together perfectly. Recordings of the battle played on secondary screens. The council members watched again as the human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship supporting the others. We learned from nature, Wright added. Wolves hunting larger prey, bees defending their hive, ants building complex structures. The small working together can overcome the large. A dominator representative, newly appointed after their regime change, spoke up. Our ships had more power, more weapons, more everything. How did you beat us so easily? Because more isn't always better, Stone replied. You built your ships to overwhelm enemies with brute force. We built ours to win. The council's chief engineer presented his analysis. Human ships are marvels of efficiency. No wasted space, no unnecessary systems. Everything serves a purpose. They're not small ships. They're perfectly sized ships. Representatives from various worlds began sharing their own reports. Human vessels had already helped stop pirates, rescue stranded ships, and protect trade routes. Their speed and precision made them perfect for almost any space operation. We've prepared a joint defense proposal, Wright announced. Earth is willing to share some of our technology and train Council forces in our tactics. In return, we ask for full membership in the Council and joint defense agreements. The vote was unanimous, a first in Council history. As the session ended, a young aide approached Wright. Sir, is it true what they say? That Earth has even smaller ships that we haven't seen yet. Wright smiled mysteriously. Size isn't everything, remember? But yes, we have ships for every purpose. Some so small you couldn't see them without special sensors. Others, well, let's save some surprises for later. The council chamber slowly emptied, but the holograms of human ships still floated above, a reminder of how first impressions could be deceiving. The galaxy had learned valuable lessons. Never judge by size alone. Never underestimate human ingenuity, and most importantly, sometimes the smallest ships could make the biggest difference. Back on their ships, human crews continued their patrols, quietly proud but professional. They didn't need massive vessels to show their strength. The galaxy had learned what Earth knew all along. True power comes in many sizes, and sometimes the smallest package carries the biggest surprise. The age of the giant ships was over. The era of human innovation had begun.